again. This topic, this panel, arose out of a conversation I had with Signavio at the BBC conference, a kind of complaint that they had, and then I spoke to Kramer from Sapiens, and he said, yes, I agree with this problem. We have this problem. And then Denis, he wasn't complaining about any of it, but he is another good...
I'm a natural complainer.
He doesn't complain usually, but I think he's representative of the kind of company that this issue affects. And then Clay, I guess he's going to be the whipping boy. Explain, well, like how do we actually get this to happen, or what are the barriers to happen?
But keep in mind, I have my own whip too.
He's got his own whip.
We can.
All right. So what's the problem, or what's the issue? The issue is that as we see, what we used to call BPM is an ever enlarging space, and to the extent that it's covered by analysts at all, the coverage is dominated by the runtime. So you got the $1 million products, and then there's maybe a little free or inexpensive modeling piece. But as this marketplace has become more and more business driven, there's an interest in having tools, modeling tools, for business people, and of course, process modeling by itself is now seen as that's not enough. So we need to have a broader view. Maybe it's case modeling, maybe it's decision modeling, maybe it's data modeling, maybe it's organizational modeling, maybe it's KPI modeling. They're all related. Maybe we need a common repository. Maybe we need a suite of editors that work together. So, developers have had these things, architects have had these things, but the constituency for what we've been calling BPM, the business analyst, BPM project team member, business architect, have not had these tools, okay? And so what we're seeing is if a company has a bpmN editor, well, now they're going to add a case CMMN editor, a DMN editor, an organizational modeling tool. But, and so they're doing that, but they cannot get attention for this from the analysts. So to present this larger thing to their customer base, there's no vehicle for that. Part of it is it's modeling, it's not runtime, and part of it is it's sort of this enlarging sphere. So that's the topic here, and as you can see, it sort of relates to what we heard earlier today of, what the heck is BPM anyway? It's changing. It's an enlarging space. So I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and sort of how they fit into this. I have a few questions, but I expect that people in the audience will have lots of questions too. So you don't need to wait until the end to ask your questions. Let them introduce themselves, but I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So Clay, why don't you start and we'll go down the line.
Clay Richardson, Principal Analyst with Forrester Research. So see a lot of friendly faces in the room and people that I've worked with. Have been in BPM for, I guess, going on 15, 16 years. So seen a lot of evolution. So good to join the conversation.
Thanks, Bruce, and good morning, everyone. Kramer Reeves. I run product marketing at Sapiens Decision. Spent about 12 years in the BPM space. Took a couple years break and moved into collaboration, and back in it now for the last 7, 8 months. Most of that time was with IBM, and I'm very interested in the topic coming from a platform vendor, and now really working from a specialist perspective to hear folks' thoughts and to have a discussion around this.
And I'm Denis Gagne from Tech, and I've been involved in a lot of what we use in terms of standards now in BPM. At the WFMC, I work with Robert Shapiro on XPDL, the older version of XPDL. I was chair of the Business Process Simulation Working Group there. At OMG, part of the BPMN team, the CMMN team, and the DMN team, and other obscure couple of letter standards that people don't know, like DD and all those things, but very involved in the standard industry.
Okay, so let me start off the questions, and I use the term in the brochure, in the blurb, business modeling. I'm not sure that's a good term for it. You know, we heard this morning digital transformation. Nathaniel still likes BPM. So I'm not sure what the right term is, but what was in my head is we've got these tools now that have BPMN, DMN, CMMN, maybe data modeling, maybe KPI modeling, other related things, business-oriented tooling to plan, analyze, and make things better. So I would say, what should the term be? Who uses it, and what does it encompass to you? Let's start with you.
Maybe I'll start first with when you use BPM earlier, and I said, which BPM? Is it business process modeling, business process management? And I think that's part of the confusion, right? Is companies trying to figure out, well, what's the use case? So a lot of customers that I work with, they struggle with this. Am I using it primarily for modeling? Am I using it for automation? And so I think that's the first piece, is we need to give a clear designation of what is this category really used for. I like the term business modeling, and for several reasons. I think what you're describing, there is a need for. I was working with a client last week where they were focused on, we were helping them with business model canvas and trying to design for new products, new digital products and services. Well, that's the first step. Next step, they need to do business process modeling. They need to get into KPI modeling, all of that. So I think there is a space for business modeling as a product, as a category.
Higher level than the process modeling.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you look at what's going on with digital transformation, the conversation that Neil had this morning, that Nathaniel had, companies are trying to do this transformation. Just having a business process modeling tool or just having some business architecture tool is not going to be enough standalone. And I think you do need to bring these things together around business modeling. So there's definitely some challenges with getting the analysts to pick this up. I think it's less an issue with the analysts. Analysts, and for those of you that are analysts in here, you can agree or disagree, analysts cover what customers have demand for. That's how we keep our jobs.
But you also create demand.
Right, and agreed, we also create demand, but the key is we have to see significant interest or demand. And I shouldn't say significant, but we have to see some indication that there is a problem, right? And the question is there a big enough problem that can't be solved by the different tools? So that's what I look at.
So Kramer.
Well, if you asked me this question a couple years ago when I was at IBM, I would say, yes, let's create an Uber category, because the larger the category, the better it is for the larger vendors. And there's probably some truth to that, but you could argue that. I do also like Nathaniel's point that the best of breed approach lends itself to, maybe he didn't say it directly, I'll infer faster innovation in a particular market. So, and being with a specialist, now we focus on decision management, decision modeling capabilities. That's what Sapient Specialty is in. We don't really have workflow. We don't have orchestration. There's no task management. There's really no monitoring. We partner with vendors to do that. And no intention to move into the space, but it allows us to be very focused and good at what we do. Now, how does that translate to adoption in the market? Does that specialization inhibit faster adoption, or can it help facilitate with a more targeted approach? And I think that's kind of where we can have some debate.
Denis?
So I'd like to build up on what Clay said. I think for the last few years, we've been proposing a solution. BPM was presented as a solution. What we failed to do, I think, through all these years, is clearly identified the use case for which this is a solution to. And so we ended up with this horizontal solution that we all see, and it got pushed down the stack. So now all the analysts are saying, well, this is horizontal, push down the stack, what can we do now? So I think modeling is key. Whether we use the digital transformation moniker right now, because it is a use case that organizations are living through, but through that, you have other sub-use case of improvement, transformation, innovation, and modeling is the way to test and fail fast. You don't want to go do that in the real world. So all these principles that are being pushed by the Agile movement now, that are these notion of, test and try, fail fast, are all things we can do with modeling. And I think that's the benefit we bring to the table with all these notions of modeling. It's not one in particular. It's not bpmN or CMMN or DMN or any other of these things. But it's the fact that you can actually have some ideas, some concept, simplify them into a model of some kind, and manipulate this model to go get answers. And then with the advance of what we've done with standards now is that the benefit is if you've done these models correctly, they can even become useful for implementation. You can actually run them.
So who are the users of these business modeling tools? What do they call themselves? Are there enough of them to bother with?
Yeah. Well,
Anybody.
Maybe if I can chime in, because I've been working with a client that's been trying to push a business modeling use case and business case forward. It's been really struggling with it. And so the people that I see that are trying to adopt this, they tend to be in business architecture or in some architectural function. And then the other part of the story here is where they struggle and where they need help, I think from the vendors, is how do I create an ROI picture for this? This is the big challenge. This one group that I'm working with, they're trying to build a case and say, hey, here's how we get our money back. And I think the principal I've been working with has done a good job of trying to build this out. But it's not as concrete as what you would see out of automation, right? Or traditional BPM software, business process management software. And so I think that's a struggle when we say, are there enough people? I think there are enough people that are interested to make it into a market. The issue is, do they have the ammunition to build a strong enough business case to get investment? I think it's much easier to build a business case for business process management from an automation because we can track that. I think, and I'd be curious from other people on the panel or even from you, Bruce, how do you articulate the ROI opportunity around business model? I think that's a big stumbling block.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to Denis' point about failing fast, and I think that sort of no-code approach with the model, with the verification, building in that ability to test early before you get to UAT, that's where we've been seeing a lot of the value and driving demand. And when we show that testing and verification happens so much earlier, essentially during the discovery phase, then the ROI immediately jumps out. Now you can build ROI models and the normal kind of metrics. Well, how many flows are we automating? What decision points are included here? And all that stuff can be laid out.
So just to be clear, so you're saying monetize that speed to market.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then I think there's other things too around, just again in our small space, related to policies and decisions and the like. But going back to Bruce's question on the roles, now again, seeing it in a bit slightly more narrower view, we just did a webcast with the IIBA through Modern Analyst, and we had 600 register for this. We had about 300 attend, and this is just not much marketing on us. Business analysts are really hungry to continue to learn about.
What was the topic?
The topic was on decision modeling, and it was on standards. Barb Van Holly and I presented. So there's an incredible appetite. Now how influential they are in decisioning, buying is they're not there. But I think that role is still evolving as a key participant in the space.
Yeah, so to follow up to both points, so to your point, Kramer, I agree. We see a lot of the business analysts, the business architects. The business analysts are transforming what role they play. They used to be highly, requirement gatherers, and they're seeing less and less of that happening because there's more enablement of business people to do a lot of them themselves and capture that. So they're trying to migrate up the stack and bring value. And you have this new layer that call themselves business architects that are coming in, and they take a much more top-down approach to everything. So those are certainly the practice that the practitioner we're aiming to. And to go back to your point about the ROI and the justification, right now it seems like we need to tag to another revenue-aligned projects. So for example, we've seen a lot in supporting ERP introduction because, as you may all be aware, 80% of the existing ERP are planned to migrate to the cloud within 3 to 5 years. All the ERP installation are what I call wet cement. So they were wonderful and malleable when they did the blueprinting, and now it's been firm fixed for the last 10 years. Organizations have to put that out. So we have clients, for example, that are in a situation where they didn't configure the ERP. They rewrote, they customized the ERP so much that taking this to the cloud means starting from scratch. Not only does this mean starting from scratch, but the new ERP in the cloud doesn't have all the same functionalities and capabilities of the old fatware ERPs. So a lot of organizations are going to be faced with that. And that's when they realize that they got to start owning their knowledge through the model, whether it's process knowledge, decision knowledge, and capture that in a separate way, because they realize that if they would have done that 10 years ago, they would still have that knowledge in a manipulatable format to do the next move, but they don't have it now. So that's one way we can justify, is by tagging with a lot of these transformation, whether you put that under the big umbrella of digital transformation or just progressive technology. That's one way we can justify. But it'd be nice so that we could bring a justification on its own to the modeling. And I think that goes up the ladder towards business people and business executive. But until we can offer a way for business and executive to capture some aspect, right now, Oswalder business model canvas is enticing because it's simple and it's working at a high level of abstraction, so it's enticing for that. But unfortunately, it's just a template. So this is going back to Visio. We've all spent years trying to move away from Visio. So we're lacking a little bit of maturity in supporting that. But I think we have to move it so that modeling becomes a tool of executive. And when modeling will become a tool of executive, that's when the justification will come by itself. So I think we're lacking a little bit of maturity.
Interesting. So again, I encourage you to raise your hand to ask questions at any time. Yes?
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
Morning.
Thank you for your insights on the BPM. First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm not in the BPM industry, have no idea. In fact, I'm one of the potential customers trying to understand this larger picture.
Let me give you my card here.
Because you're one of the few.
People's cards you should not take.
So I just want to comment on your ideas here that you're sharing. So you've been making this reference to the larger approach. So in that sense, the comments that Nathaniel and I think you are pointing to the best of breed approach. In our case, we had that model in the past and we ran out of that model because of the sustainability. It's a very costly model. And now the company is just moving in the direction of more targeted for maintenance purposes, for sustainability. So one of the key things we want to move into the BPM, explore this opportunity, understand the value proposition for us. And we see a lot of complexity. So my first question is how to deal with that complexity. What is your vision for that? And then secondly, about the use case and the solution, which are the key benefits that you will recommend? Thank you.
Well, just I'll make a quick point about the complexity. I think it's due to the complexity that this market category and these vendors exist. The complexity lends itself to software that can help simplify and automate a lot of those complex orchestrations of work, the coordination of work that Neil talked about. So there's inherent complexity in the use case and why it's a $4 or $5 billion market. And I think that's one of the challenges some of the successful vendors have been. If you look at a lot of the entrants in the space, you look at Appian, you look at the Lombardi acquisition from IBM, you look at many of the players, the ones that create the simple environment, the easy to design and deploy environments are the ones that seem to be growing very well. I think we have this challenge, though, of getting this whole space on the radar of CIOs as a first-class agenda item for their purchasing decisions. And I think that's where we're struggling as an industry here. We're fragmented in a sense with good technology solving a complex problem, but maybe not as...
And both Nathaniel and Neil posed this as a change or die proposition, and we're hearing from Clay or some of you that, well, unless you can translate this into operational cost reduction, we can't get on the radar. So
actually, that's not true. That's not true. Hang on one second.
And that's how we lose so many companies like Blockbusters and Kodak.
But hang on a second. So the use case, the business case for BPM is expanding, right? And so it's not operational improvement. I mean, some of the data we have show that the majority of BPM use cases are shifting to customer experience and also shifting to obviously digital. But that operational driver is still there, but not as big, right? You still have to prove ROI. You're not going to get investment if you don't prove ROI, whether that's on the revenue side or on the operations side. I think it's the first piece. I think the biggest challenge with BPM, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, been in this industry for 14 years. I think we've seen the zenith of BPM, the height of it, probably 4 or 5 years ago, right? This is why we're getting questions, should we change the name, right? And part of the challenge for BPM, not just modeling, but broader BPM, is the complexity. It's not just complexity of the technology. You have to be a Jedi master to be able to go and do modeling and build something, right? This is, Phil Gilbert used to talk about this, right, from IBM, that you have to become a Jedi master, learn all the Jedi mind tricks. And one of the things that we have to do as an industry to get people like Gisela in is we have to lower the barrier to entry around just the methodologies, right? That's what scares a lot of people off, is the technology is hard to figure out. It takes, I think you were talking about this, we have numbers that show for some vendors it's 6, 9, 12 months before you're proficient. Like that would scare anybody off. If I'm a CEO today or CIO and you're saying I need to invest in a technology that's going to take me 12 months to learn, screw that, right? And so
now don't scare away our potential customer.
But I have a silver bullet. Yeah. And it's something that I've thought a lot about. It's just, I don't think the model that we've had for BPM is sustainable. I think most people in this room would agree that the model has not been sustainable. And one of the things that we've started looking at is this concept called low-code, a low-code approach and low-code technologies, right? And the idea there is fast ramp-up time, so I can actually do self-training if I want to on the technology, and also much more visual declarative development. And I think a lot of people in here that are in BPM would say, well, BPM does that. Well, yeah, BPM does, but BPM doesn't provide the application development and delivery capabilities. That's the piece that we have to start embedding. So if you think about tools like Jira and some others that help with that collaboration around the development, that's where I think BPM needs to marry up some of the low-code capabilities to make it easier to
Let me spice
enter.
this up.
Yep, go for it.
So this is the fault of the analysts.
Spoken like a true software vendor. And I used to be on that side too, so I can do an implementation, so we can go at it.
The point is, so we're talking about maturity. And the situation is that we have market maturity in general, about these notion of modeling, that is about, level 2 at best in most organizations. Some are higher, but most organizations. And the analysts forced the vendor to create level 5 tool sets.
I wasn't an analyst at the time, so
That's fine. So it's somebody else's fault. But really, that's what happened.
Maureen, it's your
What? You should never argue against analysts in a room full of analysts.
You will not win.
But I think part of the situation is that so remove the term analysts, put the term marketing. Here we are in a market where we're trying to deal with organizations that are level 2 maturity. We're trying to build standards and different things to abstract toward that simplicity of doing things. But on the other side, the marketing, whether it's ignited by analysts or not, is pushing for a level 5 suite. I mean, our clients, they want the full bells and whistles, even though they don't understand the bells and whistles they're asking for. And there's no day they will ever use these bells and whistles. And they only do that because somebody handed them a checklist of here are all the bells and whistles.
If analysts aren't covering, where's the checklist coming from?
Pardon me?
We started this whole thing saying analysts are not covering this category, so that where could possibly the checklist be coming from?
Well, the checklist has been floating around for a few years. So I just wanted to spark the conversation. It's not,
Hey, let's go.
it's no one fault. It's just a situation of the market where we publish an image of level 5 maturity to organization. So what we market to them is that they'll be able to optimize and do things when they don't even have control about the basic of their own organization. So we sell them on the dream of optimization, and then we deliver with technology that is complex to handle. So they're all confused and stuck in the middle. And us, we're part of the culprit. It's not just the analyst.
Can I ask a poll?
Did I
ask the audience a
navigate out of
question?
this?
Can I see a show of hands? How many people believe every application development project of significance that's running your 6 core processes in an organization, how many application development projects should include the technology that we're talking about here today? Let's say all of them. How many people agree that all projects should include some degree of BPM,
Business process modeling.
BPM process modeling,
Process,
management,
decision,
these kind of technologies?
For modeling.
Okay, that's pretty good. All right, put those hands down. Let me do the opposite. How many people think that there is a significant amount of application development work that doesn't require anything we're talking about today? Okay, so that's interesting. There's a small
Not
percent.
significant, though.
But I'm talking about significant processes that run organizations. You believe that there's a significant process that runs an organization that requires zero technology that we're talking about today?
No, and and that's why I say not significant. I
Okay,
think when
okay.
you get into building digital products, digital services, I don't know if business process modeling and management moves at that speed for delivery, right? We're talking about, you know.
And it's not the focus.
Yeah, and it's not the focus, but that's becoming a larger part of organizations, right? Meaning this innovation group, they're out driving forward, delivering new products in days and weeks, right? And so I think that piece, I don't know if this is completely suited. The business model canvas might be suited, but traditional process modeling, process management may not be.
Okay, there was
That's
a
my
question,
only, that's my only
here.
question mark.
Yeah, I have some questions. So, I've been about 8 years into BPM, bpmN, bpmS, whatever, on the client side. So I work from banking industry,
Okay.
and I went from very large European banks, like BNP and Société Générale, to now I work in
Maybe the mic, Bruce.
You want it?
the microphone.
Yeah.
My accent is not very good.
No, it's perfect.
Okay, so, and
Excellent.
to summarize, to put you my insight as a head of business architecture and BPM practice from within banks, so I contact from companies that provide these services, be it like people like Mega or Casewise that provide the platform, or Gartner, Forrester, or Trizotech that provide more a practice approach and a notation approach. The real struggle we had, and you said it a little bit before, as a client, as a banking industry, is really the use cases for modeling and the sustainability. Because every time, if you take Société Générale, for example, they had like 6 different, let's say, initiatives to bring BPM modeling inside the company. So from investment banking, retail, security services, whatever. And every time it failed because you always have like a good momentum when you start this. So everyone wants to model and then everyone puts BPM. But at the end, you create such a gap between what is your current operations and what is your target model that you have in your repository like Mega. And the thing, that's why I think most of the vendors, they actually miss the point for banking industry because they don't focus on the sustainability, which is more a radical change on how your analysts, but not only the business side, the IT side works. Because I think for me, the key to have your BPM modeling work is to actually ensure that every time you do an IT project, and even before doing an IT project, just the way you will, let's say, do your budget distribution between your different projects for a business line. So when they have their whole budget envelope, it has to be projected on their processes. So you have to model your processes and then include it into your project management methodology to ensure that your first step is to use your business process as your entry point of every project that you are doing inside your company. And that's really the key, because once you put the money where it is, you ensure that everything that is delivered after that, because the problem, as you said, for BPM modeling is that you don't deliver anything. You don't do automation. You don't have an ROI basis on this. It's just the way you model your company. And the model itself doesn't create value. It's how to use it. And it cannot go alone on the business process side. It has to be matched with the data modeling as well. It has to be matched with your IT infrastructure framework, from functional architecture to technical architecture as well. It is a whole stack of how you describe your company and how it works, and and this is really the best use for me is to use it as a way to distribute the money that head of line, so head of marketing, head of retail, head of operations will put their money into their projects. You can use it for other things like risk management, you have KPIs, you have audit, and then operational loss. So people always have like a major component to build their business case, to bring modeling inside the company. Usually is when you are, as you said, when you replace your ERP, you have to describe your whole processes. When you bring a new, let's say, software that changes everything you do, you have to do your business processes. But once you do that, basically the momentum just dies, and then you end up with having the whole knowledge of your company somewhere stocked into some repository that no one uses. So that's it. That's my idea is really to put it in daily life.
So it sounds like to create this ROI case, certainly at the senior level, you need to, or the space needs to offer more than a typical modeling vendor provides.
Well,
so what is the ecosystem, or what is the whole product in this space?
Well, this is very, very good observation. I think in terms of making it more sustainable, I think you do have to have more embedded process mining, process intelligence, because that's part of the challenge. The model becomes out of date as soon as you implement a new solution, and teams don't always go back and update the model or if something changes. And I think it's important to actually have this sort of mining, monitoring capability where you can see what the real process is as the process is executed, right? And so that's also getting at minimizing the time involved with going out and doing modeling, right? That's a big, big challenge that teams have. So.
Yeah, I like your point because it goes to the idea of it being a living model.
Right.
And I think our question is almost a little too narrow. It's not just about the model. It's about the entire deployment and the living executing experience. And the reason I asked the polling question
around how you use it,
and how you use it. So the reason I asked the question about the application side is because it's ultimately about deploying some system that's representing work that needs to be codified and automated. And I really think that's our challenge. Companies want, they'll code it. They'll just code the thing right away. And who are we competing against? We're not competing against each other. We're competing against coders or do nothing. That's the challenge that we have.
Coders are our friends.
Well, they are friends, but they can be augmented with some modeling capabilities.
That's the new market.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, I think what you're saying is the competition or the enemy is the old method of text-based business requirements that get handed over to coders, and then they code it, and then it's maybe not what the business wanted, those old complaints, whereas this is a more agile, sort of rigorous methodology-driven approach, but it's still hard to sell the ROI of that.
There's also kind of a fallacy that all models are created equal, in the sense that within any organization, there's going to be a lot of models that are throwaway models, that you just model for the particular exercise that you're doing, and then you get rid of it. And usually those models are the higher abstraction models that you want to, separate and weed things out. And then once you have a clear target, then you get into deeper modeling of that can get all the way down to operational. And that's part of the problem too that we have, is that people want to get right down to the operational model to start with before doing this throwaway abstraction. So the benefit of things like the canvas from the business model canvas is that, for example, I was having a discussion with some clients on the Lean Six Sigma side of the house. They're not really in this room, and we all know that there's yet another room of the Lean Six Sigma people and their practice but when you talk with them, you see that to them, the model is just a transient thing. If you're doing value stream mapping in Six Sigma, once you've done your mapping and you pinpoint where you're going to focus, you throw away that model. That model has no value to them. Where we're in a world, or we aim for a world where the model can be persistent and useful as we go forward, but we have to discern which models we have to keep and which we don't. And to your point is that now that, my joke is always a very large company, insurance company in Canada. 10 years ago, I went and did a training of process modeling. There was 26 business analysts and 2 architects in the room. 10 years later, they asked me to do a refresher. There was 19 architects and 5 analysts in the room. So basically, that's an indication that they're probably just spinning around trying to model everything there is to model around without executing. So the model has to be used in the proper way at the right level of abstraction. Some models are meant to be persistent over time because they capture and give you the transparency of how you operate. But before that, there's probably a lot of models that just throw away, you use it. And that's where the tools can help you do that quickly.
Let me ask sort of a wrap-up question for the panel. So what can the vendors in this industry do to create this attention from either the senior executives or the analysts, or to the extent that they work together? What can the vendors do in concert to create this better visibility that maybe we're not doing today?
Reject the IBPMS Magic Quadrant. Michelle Canter is not going to like that I said that, but I'm sorry. That's my.
Thank you for removing some of the pressure on me.
But not the forest. Right?
No, definitely not
Well,
the
we
lane.
didn't.
I like
Hey,
the lane.
on a
I
non-
like the.
On
the
a
IDC.
non-anti-analyst note, I think the vendors do a good job. I think the biggest thing that vendors can do is give customers more ammunition on real ROI, on hard ROI metrics, on real stories, because that's the biggest challenge I have as an analyst. Is I've used these tools out in the field. I've gone out, implemented. I've been there, and I know what they can do. But we need relevant stories. We need to understand, how did company X, large bank, or whatever the industry is, implement this and got hard, tangible ROI?
I think that's
You
a
can
great
give me
point.
that.
And
I
I'm
can-
joking about the Magic Quadrant, but I think to stories, we cooperate on standards from a technology perspective.
Yeah.
Why don't we cooperate on our building a bigger pie, going to market together, so we're talking the same language?
yeah.
So let me put a Band-Aid on an earlier comment. I think as vendors, as a community, so this is the Canadian social view, we have to get together and work together in communicating the value to these organizations. And we have to bring in the analysts and in concert with the analysts. Because in the end, as much as we as vendor are there on the front, selling and interacting with the clients, you're interacting with the clients from a different perspective, an independent perspective. So I think both those bias and independent perspective got to come together in clearly communicating to this market. And this is a room that is perfect for this, because we have all these people in the room and we can exchange about this. And I think we can bring that forward very quickly by doing this.
Yeah. I'll just say, for the vendors in the room, a secret about analysts is what we eat, how we feed, is off of reference clients that you can send us. And so when I'm doing research, if you have clients, particularly in modeling or even just BPM in general, if you have clients to send to me,
Happy ones.
they don't even have to be happy, because I meet those too. So, but if you have clients with good stories, send them to us. That's what I think a lot of vendors don't really get, is that the way to get ink. I was thinking about this today. In some cases we're treated like tattoo artists. Vendors want ink from us, right? But the way to get ink is actually to send us clients. That's the absolute best way. Send us your clients with their stories. Give us a briefing with the client. And I think that's the best way the vendors in the business process modeling industry can begin to get that message out.
So the benefit we have now, though, is that this market has been around for quite a few years. And so we can have these collegiate type of gathering like we've been having for the last 4 years with bpmNEXT, which shows some maturity in the kind of interaction we can have. And that's a great benefit, because I think a lot of the vendors realize that we're not really in direct competition on everything. We're there to create a bigger market. I've always talked about, the bigger the market, the better it is for everybody. So, and I think this particular morning on the business of BPM is a good tool for us to use that. And we have to turn this into actual workshops or work session, not just presentation of positioning. Actually, it was very interesting to me that the two presentations of this morning and a lot of the discussion I had with different people, with Jim and others, and even with you and you yesterday, because I was poking people to get a sense of where they felt about this market, the message seemed to be the same from everybody. We all seem to see the same thing. So it's really a matter of moving to action, turning this view that we have and creating what's needed to support, whether it's the use case, the business case, the ROI, and the positioning. And I think between all the people we have in this room, we can come up with something very impressive with a work session.
All right, on that note, why don't we thank the panel? Very interesting session. Thank you. And maybe we can do more at bpmNEXT, either here at this event or ongoing throughout the year toward that end that you suggested. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Great job.
That's
Thanks,
good.
Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.